Members, we have the quorum. It's about time to make a start, and I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Subcommittee on matters relating to the development of Northern Metropolis. This is the first meeting. I'm grateful to members for their trust and support in entrusting me the chairmanship. It's going to be quick today because we're not going to have the government officials with us. We will be discussing the items for discussion and the schedule of meetings. The terms of reference and the work plan have been circulated to members in the form of an appendix, and members might wish to have a quick look. And members are welcome to put forward their views regarding the items for discussion. As a matter of fact, Dr. Stephen Wong proposed a subcommittee to study policy issues relating to the use of land between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And the scope also covers the Northern Metropolis. On the 31st of March, he talked about this committee. Now, Stephen is no longer part of the council, and this committee will not be activated. And as a matter of fact, we can incorporate some of the items into our subcommittee as part of the terms of reference. So we can conduct some site visits and research and studies. So other than the terms of reference tabled before members, I wonder whether you have any particular views. If you want to speak, please press the button to do so. Yes, the floor is yours. There are two number of members, Mr. Dennis Leung, Dr. Simon Lee, and Mrs. Regina Ip. Mr. Leung, please. Chairman. In this paper, we have the work plan spelled out there. I'm wondering whether we should itemize some of the issues like public housing, private housing, the scale, the ratio between the two in terms of development. And also the youth hostels, some of the youth hostels in the form of hotel rooms. Will the government be building the youth hostels instead of harnessing the hotels? And also, according to the Northern Metropolis, we're going to have a population of 2.5 million. Many are concerned about the provision of government facilities and services, hospitals, leisure, cultural facilities, police, fire services, and what will be the picture like going forward. With the sheer size of population and also the many development projects, the government keeps talking about the single site, multiple use. Now we are beset with problems like parking spaces or the dearth of parking spaces, and some departments may be requesting parking spaces to be designated, and that would roll back some of the design and hence causing long delays. Now, so in terms of parking spaces for private vehicles, commercial vehicles, goods vehicles, coaches, and so on, they are terribly important for Hong Kong. Will this be covered by our terms of reference? And in the Northern Metropolis, this is going to be an innovation and technology hub. A lot of smart developments will be there. Will these be covered as well? Now, we are talking about a population of 2.5 million. We don't really want to see a lot of people traveling in for work and then commuting back after work. It would like the satellite towns in Tuen Mun. After the development, these kind of satellite towns cannot be self-sustaining, and some of the factories are lying vacant and they're turned into the mini stores. So will we be discussing the labor force, labor participation to tie in with the development of the northern metropolis to avoid a situation where people will have to commute back and forth, overburdening the existing traffic or the transport system, and people will have to bear enormously high traveling expenses, and they wouldn't like to work in remote areas like the airport and so on. So I hope that this can be incorporated into the terms of reference for some details. Mr. Simon Lee, Chairman, the Northern Metropolis is connected with the Greater Bay Area. It is an important area. So shouldn't we understand more about the Shenzhen policies, and also shouldn't we consider collaboration and cooperation with Shenzhen? Second, about the mode of development. The government might be considering collaborating with some enterprises in the development of the Northern Metropolis. I hope that this will be taken on board as well. Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, thank you. Item 2 under the work plan to review the existing legislation, codes of practice, and technical guidelines involved in the Northern Metropolis development. Now, in terms of legislation, the government is using this town planning land and works miscellaneous amendment Bill 2022, and that's the piece of legislation to deal with an artificial island and the Northern Metropolis. So this amendment covers half a dozen legislation: town planning ordinance, land resumption ordinance, the foreshore and seabed ordinance, the railways ordinance, road use compensation ordinance, and so on. Andrew is a member of that committee. Now, this is an omnibus bill, and we will have one or two meetings looking at the textual details. And I don't think we need any further legislation. But in terms of codes of practice and technical guidelines, they are different matters altogether. We told the administration that you try to telescope the consultation period. Now, we try to work alongside with you. Now, you can engage in reclamation in absence of outline zoning plan. We agree. But the government should really get on with the project as quickly as possible. The lands department, the housing department, there is a lot of to-ing and fro-ing between these departments. So we have to talk about the technical guidelines, the KPIs, the performance pledges, and so on. We do have the legislation, but all the rest of these details should be considered. Thank you, Mrs. Yip. When they have the action plan becoming available, I think we can liaise with the relevant departments in relation to codes of practice and technical guidelines while they are trying to compress the administrative procedures. Mrs. Yip, this omnibus bill should be passed before the summer recess. I am also a member of that committee as well. Mr. Frankie Yik. Chairman, thank you. Well, looking at the work plan, item number 1, to review the spatial and functional layout and fisheries, egg and fish, and number 6, the promotion of industrial and commercial uses. Now, there is an absence of the logistics industry there. The government announced the Technopole, and this is really causing great shock to the logistics trade. Now, we are concerned about the relocation. As I said, we are trying to cut off the logistics chain. I'm not sure that this is good. This doesn't augur well for the future. Mrs. Carrie Lam said during the Q&A, said that logistics and INT are not on a collision course, and advanced modern logistics is part of INT, and I hope that we will be concerned about this. And this is close to Lantang, Heung Yun Wai, BCP, and there are a lot of brownfield operators that have to be relocated. Now, as we said, this is going to be boasting a population size of 2.5 million. We need to have labor-intensive operations there, and the logistics trade will provide a lot of opportunities there for job employment. Mr. Perry, you, Chairman, looking at this work plan, this is sufficiently comprehensive. This is broad enough to cover many areas. My question is it going to be running for 1 year? Yes, tentatively for 1 year. All subcommittees will be there for 1 year, and thereafter we will be reporting to the House whether this is going to be extended. We will be in the hands of the House committee, but tentatively it's going to be for 1 year. How many meetings are we going to have? Once every month or thereabout? Mr. Yu, I ask these questions because there is so much on our plate. How are we going to prioritize, and how are we going to take these forward? This is of concern to me. From my perspective, I am particularly concerned about the two cities, the twin cities, three circles, the Yanchao Tong, the ecological circle. This is mostly of concern to me. Like Mr. Frankie Yik, his area of concern is the logistics. We are concerned about all the provisions to be made, at least at the planning stage. We should include some tourism and logistics elements into them. Now, this is really dear and near to our heart. So if we can prioritize all these items, and that would give us a clearer picture about the situation. Ms. Elizabeth Quat, Chairman. Item 1 under the work plan, we can draw reference from relevant overseas experience in planning and development and make recommendations on the development approach. There is a mention of the spatial and functional layout. I don't think we should just draw reference from overseas experience. I think we should also draw reference from the mainland experience as well. Now, looking at the mainland development, the Hong'an development is quintessential smart city development. It doesn't start from scratch, but as a new development area, I think we can draw reference from the infrastructure and the planning for the smart city in Hong'an in the mainland. I can't see anywhere any mention of the infrastructural development for smart city. Perhaps this can be added in. And we are moving towards carbon neutrality, and the new energy development is also crucial. Now, the 3D map, smart construction site, and city brain, these are important. Unless we include these in the work plan, it will be hard for us to incorporate these later on. So in our work plan, I hope that we can have regard to the mainland experience, the infrastructure for a smart city, and also new energy development and so on. And all these should be taken into account. Mr. Andrew Lam, Chairman, thank you. I hope that this subcommittee will look at the unique features of the Northern Metropolis. A couple of points there. I go along with Mr. Simon Lee that this is a port economic zone, and this is the connecting point with the mainland. So in terms of the port management and the flow of people, and it's something that we should pay particular attention to. And second, the Northern Metropolis is unlike the Central Waters reclamation. We have a lot of land there, and we have we have egg and fish the agricultural development, brownfield operations that are already there. In the course of planning, how will the departments concerned offer assistance for these industries to transform themselves?
Thirdly, as the Northern Metropolis, currently we already started its development. It's just that in the past we call it something else. Well, how can it become a sort of like a role model for development? Do we have some policies that should be made to match with the development? I hope to hear from the administration on the way forward. Thank you. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chairman. In July of last year, LegCo passed a motion on working together with the Shenzhen port. It's actually a very important part of the Northern Metropolis. I hope that in our future discussion we could also consider it, because Shenzhen, the LRC there also contact me to look for our cooperation in the way forward. So there is going to be a lot of cooperation together with Shenzhen. So I hope that we'll be able to list out the ports and the port control for future discussion. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. The Northern Metropolis take up 1/3 of all land in Hong Kong, and it is an unprecedented development. Therefore, it must be well planned. Well, how can we handle the land use? Many recommendations have been made to strike a balance with ecological protection and also to allow for land in IT industry. These have not been set out in detail in the work plan. I have looked at the preliminary plan of the government, but only a small part has been done. For example, the highway, the railways, but then for areas outside of the railways and highways, we do not see any plan for development yet. For land that is already in use, I don't think we should intervene with its existing use. Well, I don't want to use the word force, but we shouldn't have to force certain industries to move out on the area to make way for development. This is actually a very important channel leading into Shenzhen. We must also consider the views of Shenzhen, as we didn't want to bring up controversy. Well, there is a lot that haven't been said. I just want to bring out some matters of principle in how we plan for the future. We are not only looking into increasing land use, other than coming up with land for the innovation sector. We also need to think of other ways, such as infrastructure-led development. But infrastructure has not been mentioned here. Without infrastructure, how can we go forward? I see from the maps that there are many fish ponds, and during the rainy season they become flooded. So I hope that we can also look at that. Thank you. Second round, Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, Chairman. There's one more point I want to make. The government has drawn out a very beautiful plan to cater for 2.5 million people of about 250 hectares of land, linking up the Greater Bay Area. But then they did not mention how much money would be needed and how we are going to raise the funds. So at the end of the year, there should be a plan, and then we would have a basic idea of the funds. I've asked how much land is private land and how much is for land reclamation. I think some of them would be done via land resumption, some via PPP. We really must look carefully at the funding, because to build the central water reclamation, we must also earmark funds as well. Thank you. There are still 3 members who have indicated their wish to speak: Mr. Chu Guokang, Mr. Chan Pui-lan, and Dr. Low Wei Kwok. Mr. Chu Guokang, please. Thank you, Chairman. I see in point 4 on development in economy, infrastructure, innovation, and technology. Can we also include education? Last month, other members and I visited Shenzhen to conduct exchanges. Shenzhen has many views on incinerator plants and columbaria plants. I think we should actually carry out more exchanges with Shenzhen and to try to include it into our plans to see how we can collect their views and see how we can optimize the development of the Northern Metropolis. So these should all be policies for consideration. Mr. Chan Pui-lan. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Zip has already asked my question. I'm concerned with how to raise funds and the plans in doing that. I think we should include it into our plan as well. Dr. Low Wei Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Members have already talked a lot about the development of the Northern Metropolis. I actually am a bit worried that as we're only running for 1 year, how much the subcommittee can actually do. I want to raise a point of concern. As I mentioned in another meeting, the government has drawn up a blue plan, a sort of dream for people, but then many of the dreams can actually won't be realized or cannot be realized. I agree that some land should not be intervened with, and I'm also concerned that since we're drawing at such a huge blueprint here, then we might actually be shelving other projects. We're not talking about redevelopment. We're talking about an area in which there's already people living in the area. We're actually trying to merge new development with existing development. So this is some areas of concern. Professor William Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo Ms. Elizabeth Quart. We should discuss the how we can support a smart city. Well, 13 members have expressed their views. We are going to ask the Secretariat to collate all the views, and then we will discuss with the administration. My preliminary view is that after listening to members' views, in 2021, the chief executive, after stated the plan and strategy for the Northern Metropolis, we haven't yet seen it. The new administration has not mentioned Twin Cities 3 circles. In the upcoming meetings, I think we can first look at the population of 2.5 million, and then the public-private partnership of a ratio of 7:3 on whether there is enough employment opportunities. We can first discuss these basics and then try to focus on one theme each time. For example, as some members said, we focus one theme on infrastructure, one on tourism, and maybe leisure facilities. The government has not talked much about Satogok. We could actually spend one meeting talking about tourism and leisure facilities, and then we can also talk about development, innovation, etc. We decided to set up a subcommittee because it's very difficult to dive deep into the Northern Metropolis in other meetings by focusing only on this topic. Then we can conduct more concrete exchanges with the different bureaus, such as to focus on tourism and on IT. So after we collate all the views, we'll be able to meet up with the administration and then prioritize the themes. Or should we really focus on Twin Cities, Three Circles, on only INT, and forget about tourism? Or should we also include that, such as talking about the soccer pitches and other facilities? So this is actually what I plan for the upcoming meetings. We also believe that we should draw reference from mainland and overseas experience to learn from Shenzhen on port economy. So other than setting up a steering committee and a task force on Northern Metropolis, there is also a task force on Guangdong province and also in Shenzhen. But what the task force is doing right now, we only know about the discussions when we ask questions on that. There's actually a task force on security in discussion with collocation, and we can actually try to focus on certain themes in different meetings. Perhaps at each meeting we can focus on one theme. We would also include site visits, such as visiting Shenzhen and to meet with the Shenzhen port authorities. So that's our plan. Well, would we be able to complete everything within a year? Well, we don't know yet, but at least we could delve into these matters. Other than our subcommittee, Ms. Kwok's subcommittee on smart city has also discussed related matters. All right, so this is the plan for the year. We would let members know of the next date of meeting and time after we have come to a decision. So we are going to hold a meeting once a month, and we would have a short break during August and September. If there is no other business, I'll adjourn the meeting here. Thank you.